Boo-doo-boo-doo-boo. Is it on?
It should be. I'm double checking right now. Here we go. Okay,
Hello
now
and
we're
welcome to
live.
another stream, everybody. Today we have a surprise: the XM combat rifle, the M14 of 2025 and beyond.
Well, hold on.
Now, if you're
Before
not
before you fly off the handle, let's handle some introductions
okay,
and stuff because we do need to have time for people to get in here.
well, I was going to pose the question and then go into introductions. Good lord, no confidence with this guy here. I'm not Sig, for God's sake.
All right. Don't jump ahead.
Okay, well, today we're going to talk about the XM7. If you're not familiar, it was at one point, I believe, called the XM4, or was it the 5? And then they got sued and had to change it to the XM7. And we're talking about a rifle being introduced into the military, especially just the Army's use to replace the M4 combat rifle. I'm joined here today by, of course, the channel host, Farvifian Guard. He's an author with a number of books he's working on, but he has one currently published and one getting ready to be published. How's it going, Farv?
It's all right for the most part.
Awesome. And, of course, we are also accompanied by a former military guy, a lawyer, and a published author himself with another book, of course, in the works. Armchair Warlord. How's it going, Armchair?
Doing all right. Glad to be back on. I'm just
Awesome.
QTing you guys on Twitter, so hopefully you should be.
Yeah.
Well, Twitter is always a combat zone. And, of course,
God.
I'm Mr. Nobody. I'm a nobody. I'm from the Horsehead Nebula, and we'll be talking about this interesting bit of military equipment. XM5, I believe, Colt already had it trademarked, and it got sued. Thank you for that, Paul. And how's it going, Revan? Today, we're going to be talking about this new weapons platform, I guess, because it can also be transformed into and I'm doing physical air quotes, saw.
Dubiously, I will say, to be generous.
We're going to cover a little bit of the information that is publicly allowed to be talked about and some of our thoughts and, of course, a couple historical elements.
And if you'll permit me, we discussed
sure, yeah.
this once before, a while back, when they first announced this friggin' thing. And back then, we called out a lot of what we assumed were going to be the problems with it, just by looking at the design specs and what had been released. Well, now we have a monograph that has been released by Captain Braden R. Trent, active duty in the U.S. Army. And I've read this entire document, and then I read through some of it again. And he's a little bit more generous on his opinion than I am with it, but he makes it very clear that he doesn't feel that the rifle as it exists is appropriate for the role which is being sold as, which is, I feel like, kind of an understatement.
Well, I think
it's almost like, the three of us talked about this 3 years ago, brought up all these issues, and what do you know, they've all come to pass.
Along with a couple of
all
others.
the same things, and I strongly do not believe that anything will be changed at all, especially through introduction. And I also believe it will probably be the second shortest serving rifle in the military, because whoever abducts it, if anyone remembers the UAC, well, that in general who helped get that inducted, he went off to work for Boeing. So as soon as the general that helps get this inducted goes off to work for, whatever company, they will probably go, look at all these problems. We could have solved them in some other way. Thank God we wasted all this money.
I'm not sure that this will go down quite the same way as things did with the M14, but for context, why don't we address the M14? Because this is seeming like deja vu.
It really seems like a remarkably similar development process that for both the M14 and the 7.62 millimeter NATO round have gone into this.
It is, to give a little historical context, the M14, when NATO and joint operations were becoming a thing, especially during the Cold War, they wanted to create a weapon platform and a round that all of the members use, so that no matter where any of the militaries were operating, if they were operating within an ally's sphere of operation, or whatever you want to put it as, they could tap into the local supply chain and it wouldn't be a problem. The problem with the M14 was it went against everything the rest of NATO wanted, and it was the ordnance that was trying to force this rifle to be a thing, and it was a failure, just like what we're seeing happen with the XM. There's no interest in the rest of our allies in adopting this newer
nobody
round.
wanted it.
There's no interest in them actually looking at the rifle itself, and it is repeating a lot of those elements. Plus, we're hearing several other issues besides parts wear and things of that manner. We're also finding that a lot of soldiers are having trouble operating with it. A lot of soldiers are having trouble conducting just training operations with it. One operation that was mentioned, they hadn't running out of ammunition.
Well, the combat load for this thing is almost preposterous because not only of the increased, size and weight of the weapon itself, but the fact that the ammunition, it carries less ammunition per magazine, and the ammunition is heavier, which means your combat load is increased, and you're still carrying less ammo.
You're getting less for more weight.
Yeah, the combat load is 7 20-round magazines, so it's 140 rounds, which by the way, people were criticizing.
To answer your question, Potato, the M14 is the Woodstock magazine-fed rifle that the Marine Corps were using in Full Metal Jacket.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's its big cinematic debut is Full Metal Jacket. Because the M14 was still being used in basic training through 1971, I want to say, because even though we were fighting in Vietnam with the M16, we had all these M14s on the books, so troops not in Vietnam were still using them until about 1970-71.
And especially our first issue, troops into Vietnam were using it.
I would say they deployed our guys into Vietnam very erroneously with the M14. It wasn't till 1st Cav landed, my old unit, landed in Nam with a load of the new M16s that they even had them in the field.
So let's give a little bit more of a basis here. We already, with the United States military, especially the Army, ask our soldiers to carry some of the heaviest combat loads of any nation, between body armor, water, cleaning kits, medical, and on top of it, any rations that they're going to take with them, and the rifle, the optics, and of course the expected combat load of ammunition. But most people were carrying more than that. So what we're doing is we're asking them to carry even more weight,
pretty much,
but having less firepower,
less ammunition. And this is considering that most soldiers that I knew, and people have even said in other units, most soldiers that they knew or encountered, usually tend to carry more ammo than is technically allotted. Because nobody wants to get caught flat-footed.
You don't want to be in a combat situation.
7 magazines isn't really that much.
No, it's
really not.
You're going to run through them. And some of the problems I see is the priorities of this almost completely mirror what were the priorities with the M14. And the funny thing is they all run counter to even priorities that we had in World War I once the U.S. Army, and even Germany, just to put it in that regard, had run into where they went, hey, the combat ranges aren't at 500 or more meters, they're at 300 and less. Yep. So you saw them adapting to it, and one of the reasons we were so successful in World War II was the M1 Garand having more firepower it could put out than the K98 and the developments later on. But we're seeing that it's the same requirements, effectively long range, a larger, heavier hitting round, and more air quote distant accuracy while sacrificing its close capability.
Well, it's sacrificing your reliable rate of fire It's sacrificing a number of issues logistically because this is a proprietary round. Nobody else is going to have it. So if your supply lines are cut off, you're hosed because you're not procuring this shit in the field from anybody else.
Well, and I mean, also, it's this round is such a monster. It's an 80,000 psi round, which is well outside the spec of almost any rifle round.
It's actually causing gas block issues in the rifle that are warping the rifling in the barrel.
Yeah, it's causing mechanical wear on rifles as early as 2,000 rounds, which is not a lot of rounds. In fact, I mean that was part of the reason why the old 1895 Lee Navy rifle didn't last long in service, was because that round was a barrel burner on the order of 2,000 rounds.
Pretty much, yeah.
And
that was a bolt action.
And we're having to build facilities just for its production.
Yeah.
It's it's a steel jacketed round.
Yeah,
so we can't even use what
is
most commonly used in rifles.
Yeah, because reading the document, reading the document, the round already actually goes above the safety standard for the round, which is why they had to change the jacket.
Well, it's not even a steel jacket round, really. It's a bimetallic case round with a copper front and a steel base, which I'm sure costs a great deal to manufacture, and I'm sure the manufacturers are just charging an arm and a leg for this.
Well, it's proprietary, and they're going to build facilities just to produce it, but it's only going to be sold to the U.S. Army. Mm-hmm. The Marines seem to be dragging their feet on the concept of, which, by the way, was another selling thing, because they were like, well, the Marines were going to go into it too, and now the Marines are like, we're not that interested. So it's going to be the boondoggle by the Army.
The round aside, there's a number of issues with this as a standard, and bear in mind, they don't want this as a DMR. They want this as a standard infantry combat rifle. There are so many issues with it apart from the weight. The barrel length is too long for any kind of close quarters engagement. It's too damn long. And then you add to the fact that they have to put a suppressor on it because of the gas block pressure generated by these particular rounds is so loud. They had to mount a suppressor as standard kit on this thing. Then on top of that, if you're doing night ops, the round generates so much heat coming out of the barrel that after a few rounds, the suppressor starts to glow red hot. So not only is that going to serve as something that the enemy can see at night, but it is also causing the optics to not work properly because the silencer is too bright.
I also think this is a problem in search of an issue, as they would say back when I was around most of this kind of shit.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you actually why I think the Marines weren't very enthusiastic about this. Is they've been lately making noises about because they just adopted a new rifle themselves, which was the M27, which has issues, but it's kind of like the XM5 or the XM7 writ small because it's also kind of gigantic. But they've just poured a bunch of money into being like, oh, we're gonna issue these M27 infantry automatic rifles every one of our riflemen, and now the Army has somehow managed to one up the Marines on being crusty individual marksmanship cultists.
Yeah. And coming back to the weight on this thing, with the issues we've already, demonstrated here. So, the XM7, and I'm talking about bottom barrel, remove the rounds, remove the optic, which is required, remove the suppressor, which is required, weighs 8.14 pounds unloaded.
Yeah.
That's the rifle by itself. Now, the way it's issued...
I thought it was about 9-something, actually.
No, I'm actually reading the report right now.
Okay.
Now, as issued with the optic suppressor, it weighs 15.4 pounds.
Oh, my Lord.
I think that might have been a typo. I know they put it in a magazine and an optic on a scale, and it came out to like 13.2 pounds. Yeah, that's still incredibly heavy. An M1 Garand is like 9.
And I also think he's counting this as loaded.
So is the M14.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, well, let's go like this. what do you guys think is gonna be the outcome of this rifle being adopted?
I mean, honestly, I think at this point it's very much up in the air whether it's going to be adopted.
Oh, they're trying to force it.
I think it's going to get forced by ordinance, just like the M14.
Yeah, I think ordinance will force it through.
I know they're trying to force it, but we also just had a very mature program, which was the M10 Booker tank that's not a tank get axed after people realized it couldn't go over bridges at Fort Riley.
Well, here's what I think. I think that much like the M14, the crusty old shitbags in ordnance will force this through with political connections and everything else, just like they did back in Vietnam and prior to that. It'll go out there, it'll perform okay in some situations and perform poorly, and in training they've already had just common soldiers have issues firing this thing from the crouched position because it's so fucking heavy and it bungles up on their gear and body armor. So there may be casualties if it's actually taken into combat, and there's certainly going to be mechanical issues.
And I was saying this earlier, which is this is a gun which was so poorly designed that it has, whatever committee designed this thing had literally put two different charging handles on it. It has a redundant piece of metal on it.
Yeah.
And it has the M16 style charging handle, which is at the rear of the receiver, and then it has a side charging handle.
Which, by the way, reading some data on that, I also found out that the rear charging handle, you have to pull it kind of at an angle, and if you don't pull it the right way, you can break the charging handle.
Well, and you want to know why that is. It's because this charging handle is such an afterthought. The way they designed the stock, it's not straight coming back. There's
so
like
you have to pull it up at an angle.
Yeah, which it was not designed to do. You just have to literally bend it to use it.
So now if you pull it too hard when you're angling the damn thing out, you can actually break it, and then it's completely fucked.
Yeah. So I mean, you have this so little actual thought went into designing this thing beyond presumably just mindlessly following a specification, which was, by the way, made almost certainly drawn up by idiots.
I don't even know if
literally
it's
have a completely redundant piece of metal on.
I feel like it was designed not by idiots, but by people who are just your average stubborn ass, it's my way or nothing fucking boomer brass.
Well, I think the primary drive for this rifle comes out of Afghanistan, and that's.
And I'll tell you this: the push for this kind of rifle has been in progress for at least 10 years, probably more. Driven by a limited amount of combat experience in Afghanistan. By the way, this is not the most lethal combat engagements in Afghanistan.
No, they were very specific engagements, not the norm.
Yeah, they were specific engagements in which the infantry felt they were being outranged by the enemy. Enemies who had no intention of closing with them, and who they end up beating anyways because we have artillery.
We have artillery.
It was a small a subset of engagements in Afghanistan in which the enemy is harassing us from very long range with full caliber
fire.
Generally ineffective fire, and this caused the certain communities within the infantry to have just a heart attack, and you saw, and I think the most influential white paper that was published on this was this white paper published back more than 10 years ago now. I read it when I was in the career course called Taking Back the Infantry Half Kilometer, in which this author just goes on and on about how important it is to just be able to drop bad guys at 500 yards beyond the fact that,
which ties right into the XM's ideal range being 500.
Yeah, precisely. But even in Afghanistan, the most lethal firefights, the ones that, the battles in which, people were killing and being killed. I mean, Wanat was not fought at 500 meters. That was an engagement which was fought at bad breath distance.
You're going down a mountain and you run face forward into a guy who's coming up a mountain, and you engage in a firefight. You're not firing from one mountain to the next, and those
not even close.
Those firefights where you called in a Apache or support fire, and those guys were gone generally. You're not going to exchange fire at those extreme rates or ranges and actually have a kill effectiveness, even with rifles like the XM XM7 is going to be. Now, I did a quick bit of looking over the M27 infantry automatic rifle. Apparently, it had been inducted at some point, but the things I thought were interesting out of it is it keeps most of the design for the M4, and it keeps the 5.56.
Yeah.
They dumped moving up to the higher.
Purpose, yeah.
And I think this is an interesting little bit to kind of come in there as people get to have their say on there. We're talking about a problem that has been something oddly enough. I believe even my father, when I was talking to him about some of this stuff a couple years ago, he referred to it as the cult of marksmanship.
Yeah, and we've discussed that ourselves before.
They have been around, and I think the paper even refers to them as gravel bellies.
Yes, it does, repeatedly.
It has been this fight since World War II to the present day about this idea of this long-range marksmanship-based situation, which has not proven itself to be.
Not the slightest.
Well, and I mean, you say they've been around since World War II, but really they've been around since the 1880s.
Yeah, it's been
this is a group that's been around since like the Indian Wars.
long time, and I still contest that if Custard hadn't refused the 2 Gatlings that he had been offered, he would have won. But on the other end of it, I'm going to put this, and I want your guys' opinion on it.
Yeah.
I was sitting there and I was reading through this paper, and I'm like, we're on the cusp of what's possible via physics with firearms, but we also have a number of different technologies that are emerging from energy-based weapons and so on that are going to be within the near term, not like tomorrow, but in the near term, coming into fruition. Do you think it's a wise idea not to just simply incorporate newer capabilities into what we have now? Or do you think that it's wise that the Army's trying to force into potentially a dead end before newer technologies show up and potentially displace ballistic firearms in the
me personally, because I think replacing ballistic firearms on the, infantry level is a long way off. What I feel is twofold. One, I feel that this is just grasping at straws for a bunch of old fucking brass who are on their way out from ordnance and maybe even the Quartermaster's Corps again to just try and secure their new executive job at some frickin', manufacturing outfit from one of these arms dealers. I guess it's SIG in this case. And I also feel that it's completely idiotic because field logistics are vital. Like, the Germans learned this the hard way when in Africa and in Russia. It's vital.
Did the Italians.
Yeah, and the Italians. And you can't suddenly introduce this new proprietary round that only one manufacturer makes because it's going to take time to make production facilities to get these out, for the logistical reasons to begin with. And when you have, a couple of active battlefields already, it's ridiculous. Because now nobody else, allies or otherwise, is going to have these rounds. You're sending these guys out in the frontline situations with rifles that they can't maintain because the parts are going to be almost as hard to get as the rounds. Let's be realistic here. And we already have at 2,000 rounds, barrels warping. We're having issues with the bolt. The suppressors are not going well.
I saw that. I read the same report you did. I saw that those photos of him.
Yeah.
The bolt carrier
Oh my god.
At 2,000 rounds, and that the extractor had been ground down to a 45-degree angle. I was like, this isn't safe. This is a problem. This is going to blow off.
And that one guy's suppressor malfunction.
So, what's your opinion on that, Armchair? Do you think that this is a situation in which they're trying to force this rifle at a time period where it would be better to simply induct newer elements into the current one, and before we start seeing future technologies start taking a firmer hold, or do you think it's an actual good move?
So, I mean, I think the current situation with infantry small arms right now is they're they're kind of developed to where they're going to go, at least until there's some new breakthrough technology.
And this ain't it.
Just raising the chamber pressure to dangerous levels is not a breakthrough technology because metallurgy hasn't gotten that much better in the last 50 years.
Not really.
We're not putting titanium in the barrels.
No. Yeah, the standard steel barrel is nothing special about it, as far as I know. Okay. And also, here's my, and I've made this point on Twitter before, which is that at 500 meters, the infantryman's rifle is not the decisive arm of a combined arms battle. There's many weapons, machine guns, mortars, artillery, even to some extent.
Yeah.
Which are far more effective in the 500, the 500 to 300 meter range, and even the 200 to 500 meter range. But to win the battle, the infantry have to go over the objective, and in doing so, they have to be fighting on an individual level with their rifles, which means the range at which the infantryman's rifle is the decisive arm of battle, right, is under 100 meters, where the infantryman himself is engaging enemy targets decisively at an individual level, and there's no other weapon that can do a better job than the infantryman's rifle. That's under 100 meters. Often it's bad breath distance, and we see this in Ukraine a lot. With a lot of infantry combat, there is full automatic bad breath distance stuff. Not
people who can almost throw rocks at each other.
Yeah, literally within grenade range. Often very close combat. And what is decisive there? In fact, the Russians have made two moves to increase their lethality in a very close range environment.
Yep.
Which actually
what's
kind
decisive
of
there is size and weight of your weapon. Mm-hmm. Do you have a very short maneuverable weapon, and also just volume of fire you can put on it? And because you're not doing really detailed,
we don't want something that's going to spray bullets inaccurately and haphazardly, but you need something that can put fire down range. A weapon that can't maintain a high rate of fire at a range of under 300 meters is not helpful.
Yeah.
No. And
what the Russians have actually done as far as small arms technology developments in the last year is they've done two things. First of all, they're introducing a updated service rifle, and they already had a new one going into this war, which was the AK-12, but they're introducing the I want to say the designation is the AK-12S. Which is a shortened AK-12 with I think a 12-inch barrel, and provisioned to permanently mount to basically habitually mount a suppressor. Because they've also had a lot of success with suppressors in that. The other thing we've noticed them doing is they've been developing duplex and triplex rounds. Now, part of that is for anti-drone work, but also part of that is doubtless for use at very close range, in which if with one trigger pull you're putting 2 or 3 bullets down range, that is might not be the most accurate thing, but if you're fighting somebody at 25 meters, it could be very decisive.
Yeah.
The first round might not kill them, the second will.
Yeah.
Depending on placement.
Down. That's what often ends up happening. And body armor doesn't matter if you've been shot 20 times.
Yeah. Eventually it gets worn down. And that kind of butts into another thing I was going to bring up after that, is that two of our major in-theater, I'm not going to call them peer groups, but are the Chinese and the Russians, and they have both developed or are developing their main rifles to be more and more like the M4.
Yeah.
While we're trying to move more and more away from it, and it's they're weapons that don't have the same capability and or flexibility as the M4. But you can see they're trying to push towards that, while at the same time we are pushing away from it. It does really feel like the M14 being pushed towards, while the AK-47 was becoming a real on-battlefield thing.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Does anyone else get that gist?
Deja vu.
Like, we're moving away from things that we know that work and are effective and can be modified further to increase and maintain not only their lethality but the dominance that we currently have. Mm-hmm. While we have people who seem to have no actual combat capability and or experience trying to dictate towards something that satisfies how they see war fighting occurring.
Ugh.
And my question for these people is almost like, where are you getting this, right? In what universe, what combat experience, either personal or secondhand, has led you to the conclusion that we need that what we need right now is a battle rifle? That's never been the answer. That hasn't been the answer for in fact, it hasn't been the answer for 100 years now. It's just what it took us until about. I mean, it took the Soviets until about 1945 to figure it out. It took the West until 1965 to figure it out.
And what bothers me, and this is true of back when they started doing the M16, the replacement M16 field tests, is also the nasty habit of Ordnance and the Quartermaster's Corps to claim that they have input from the soldiers who don't have a problem with X, Y, or Z, when they do a very, let's say, politically motivated, very limited sample of people who they already know they're going to agree, instead of asking the guys who are actually out there getting shot at using these damn things.
I saw an article, or not sure if it was an article or a video that came out recently, where apparently soldiers had given a great deal of feedback on the XM7, much of it negative, and the only stuff that got released to the media or published, apparently, it was just positive stuff.
They deliberately omitted the negative statements and only chose to publish the positive, what little there was.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with the modern military, more than anything, where it doesn't seem like there's an appetite, especially within certain segments, to be the person that takes negative information up higher, because it's a career killer.
Yeah.
And we wait. Now we see. Go ahead.
Go on. Sorry.
Now we see a situation where when something negative happens, someone goes, "I'm not going to take that up the thing because it's going to end my career." We'll wait until the person that wants this is gone, so that no one can be blamed, and then we can deal with the problem. And I think that's becoming a bigger and bigger problem in regards. But go ahead and put your point out there.
I mean, what I was going to say was, I think this also ties directly into issues of corruption.
Yeah,
because everybody always complains like, all these people, all these generals and sergeant majors and so on are getting paid positions at Sig Sauer or Raytheon or Lockheed Martin or whatever company of the day it is. After they retire, in large part because these procurement decisions are steering. But again, if people are terrified to bring negative feedback of a weapon or a system up higher, because the higher ups just have an extremely negative reaction to this, perhaps that extremely negative reaction is being driven by corruption. Right? They're pissed off because they realize, oh wait, if this gets canceled, I'm not getting that board seat.
In my opinion, this is because we already know that if anybody ever enforced the standards, it's already against regulations to be doing this shit. You're not supposed to be able to hold a military position and take favorable deals, even if they are arranged for after your, officer career. You're not supposed to be allowed to take this because you're not supposed to be allowed to take any kind of coercement while you're holding this kind of a position in the military. But this never gets enforced on any of the upper brass because all of the political maneuvering, all the political dealing. I count that as a form of that very same corruption.
Administrations that will actually enforce that. But also, I think one of the big problems you really run into is it should be codified that people who are involved in government, that involve themselves in the decision-making involved with a contract, them and their family should not be allowed to work for those companies or related companies or subsidiaries.
They should.
But Izzy, Pretty, you did a point. You didn't have to redact your message, man. Or lady, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure if somebody actually retracted their message there.
Well, maybe they're concerned, but I think you both have a point. It's corruption, and it's leading us down a road where we see products like the not tank that you had mentioned earlier, Armchair, that couldn't cross bridges. How long was that in development?
I mean, that was in development for, well, really, that program has been in development for, okay, so that specific thing was in development for several years. And yet they somehow managed to select a vehicle, which was, by the way, knowing this, because everybody said it at the time, they somehow managed to select a vehicle that was far too heavy to be used by its intended end users, which were light infantry units that did not have heavy vehicle recovery systems and did not have necessarily great infrastructure at their bases.
Let alone the ability to drop down bridges for river crossings or water crossings.
Yeah.
This stinks of the X800, if anyone's ever heard about that. It was an attempt to replace things like the Bradley with a force recon capable unit that would be able to also have all of this different sophisticated stuff, and they found out it couldn't actually maintain itself in the field because it ran out of gas. But it was in development for, it was X800, I can't remember the exact, it was X800 something, and it looks a lot like a Bradley. And it was in development for a long time. But we have a lot of boondoggles. I just think it's interesting because we have all these problems that are there. And then let's look at what's the response. So SIG is saying, these aren't problems. Nuh-uh. Just like they're saying these aren't problems with the P230.
It's like they're not only not admitting their problems, they're pretending that the problems don't exist and that it's like some kind of smear campaign or something.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. And by the way, given the problems with this this project, the P230 procurement starts looking on the M17 P230 or P320, sorry, procurement starts looking an awful lot shadier.
Yeah,
right.
It just keeps coming into, it's like these are all coming from the same manufacturer. They all seem to have problems, and every time someone says, "Hey, this is a problem," they start going, "Nuh-uh," and it's like this starts really sounding like someone's got a nice, comfortable job, and they really don't want it to go.
Paul Harley says 320.
320. I get the numbers mixed up. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
I keep messing it up. It's my fault. I apologize. Thank you for the correction, Paul. But it really is coming across as just a gigantic, corrupt boondoggle. And it seems all to be sent. Like, how come in both cases it's the same company producing the replacement?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point probably needs to be an investigation done into, did Sig Sauer corruptly influence the United States Army to adopt their pistol, which seems to have been inferior to the alternative offered from Glock, and their rifle, which seems to have been, I mean, I'm not sure if it was necessarily inferior to the other kind of weird alternatives offered in that project, but it certainly doesn't seem to be very good.
Yeah, it has way too many issues. It would be okay if they were using it as a DMR, maybe, but as a frontline standard infantry rifle, it is insufficient, and it has a lot of technical issues that need to be addressed before they try to mass field it for anything.
Well, and actually, I'll tell you, Farb, I disagree with that, because it's actually not suitable for use as a DMR, because you know what that rifle is spec'd to?
Yeah, I know.
Accuracy?
But what I'm saying is, if they were trying to sell it as anything, I think that'd be their only option.
It has too much play in its potential.
It's too inaccurate.
Yeah, it's a 4 MOA gun. There's reports on the field it's shooting at 6 MOA, which, by the way, is not any better than the M14 when it originally came out, which also had accuracy problems.
No.
When it came out in like 1960.
You're using a heavier round, it's going to have a higher drop-off. That's just how it is, even with higher power behind it. And
because if it was my decision, all of our DMR guys would get the fucking Knights SR2.
Well, to a degree, it is issued to a lot.
So I'm like, why we need this thing for anything is beyond me.
So I think
that's a really good question.
The general consensus is that it is a weapon platform that seems to have very little actually to do with the infield and even current known requirements of an infantryman. It's chasing after range and power, and the only thing I've heard this, has anyone else heard this is one of the big boogeymans that it's supposed to combat? Chinese
body armor. Yeah, I keep hearing that. Well, we need it for Chinese body armor. I'm like, okay, number one, an outright war like that with China doesn't seem like the first thing that's going to happen. And number two, you need more data on Chinese body armor, okay?
Well, the thing is,
before you start doing this.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, which is like level 4 plates are supposed to be able to stop a 30 caliber. So you know, ye olde M1 Garen 30 caliber.
Yeah.
Very high power armor piercing round. Look, I know the 6.8 round is pretty hot. It's not that hot. Everybody has access to level 4 these days.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and the reason I asked, okay, well, what is so scary about Chinese body armor? Is it somehow mystically better than Russian body armor? Because we have on-field knowledge of what the Russians are building.
There's been reports that the M4 with the proper rounds can defeat Russian body armor.
Spooky, scary thing that I have been told.
I'm going to say this right now. To me, it feels like this is just the new Russia's responsible for everything that will justify me getting a political kickback or a project through.
Well, no, they're using China in this regard.
No, but what I'm saying is it's the same thing.
Well, the thing is that they keep claiming they're going to use titanium body armor, which is absolutely hilarious if you actually understand.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would be better. I mean, than the existing body armor systems that are out there. I don't believe China has the money for it.
The reason I brought up the Russian thing is it's just another everything when it comes to some development is always an excuse. And the new excuse to push a project through as hard and as fast as possible is China.
Well, and we have no demonstration it would be actually effective.
Exactly my point.
And reliably effective, or that this would actually pose any threat. I mean, they might as well just come out and said, well, we believe that the Chinese are now fielding power armor for all of their basic troops.
Yeah,
I mean, so the thing is from everything I've seen, besides the requirements for the testing and all of that, I've seen no actual proof that the problems they're chasing after with this weapon are problems feasibly we're going to see.
Yeah, it's a solution to it's an answer to a question that literally nobody is asking.
It's a whole lot of hypotheticals for seemingly no fucking reason.
Yeah. So the only people asking this question are a small group of weird marksmanship cultists in the U.S. Army who seem to have absolutely outsized influence.
It feels like some weird act of petty revenge almost for the M14 being fucking taken out of service for all of its technical issues, because everything is so similar, even the way they're trying to sell it and force it through.
Well, the interesting thing about this whole situation is, without the ability for negative feedback, without the fact that they don't seem to be addressing any of these problems in an open and clear manner, really all it leads a lot of people to be able to conclude when they come to grips with what we're finding out is that it seems to be led by corruption, or if you want to be nicer, ignorance or stupidity. And personally, I'd rather think they were corrupt, because then at least they would be somewhat intelligent.
I think you put more stock in some of these brass than I do, but I think it's a combination of both, actually.
Well, this probably is, but I look at that and I go, I cannot see this, because I been around enough that I can say I do not see a lot of guys begging for a heavier rifle that carries less, that is really only supposed to be a long range weapon, because I've not seen much evidence pop up that goes, oh yeah, now all the combat is at range, and I'm like, yeah, that's got to be interesting in those cities.
Exactly.
I mean, that's not true, but okay. Oh, well, and actually, I mean, Favre, you were a tanker. I mean, would this have been welcome in your tank?
This thing wouldn't fit, not in any kind of, because the folding stock, even then, we had one M4 in a crew, and it had to be somewhere very specific because it didn't fit anywhere else. This fucking thing wouldn't fit in a tank properly.
Oh, well, you're fine. You got the P320, and I've understood that its main advantage is that you can pull it out, gently put it on a log, and it provides you automatic cover fire.
God help me.
You just throw it at the enemy and it keeps shooting.
You throw it to them and hope that they accidentally shoot themselves, because it's actually more dangerous in their hands to themselves. But I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, like this wouldn't have helped me out. I mean, a lot of my, I mean, if they wanted to generally issue this, I mean, first of all, this is a 13+ pound rifle.
Yeah.
I mean, look, okay, if you're like an infantryman who hits the gym and lifts all the time, like, okay, maybe you'll be all right with that. Although our report author said even the infantry is having trouble.
Yeah, the infantry were the ones who fielded it, and it's that whole thing where, yeah, if you're a fucking gym bro, then sure. But even after a while, that's going to get heavy for you if you're out in the field for an extended period of time.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of soldiers out there who are not necessarily gym studs, and who are expected to use it, or who are going to be using their weapons in essentially self-defense.
Yeah,
your little 5 foot tall girls. I mean, I'm almost thinking I almost think there might be some play here as far as making the service weapon impractically heavy to be used by women.
I don't know.
The other thing is,
it's possible, but who the fuck knows at this point?
I don't know.
In conjunction with that, we lowered for several years, we lowered the physical requirements.
Yeah, they've only recently started raising
so
that.
Maybe if we want to look at it as this is them being all third eye and 3D chest, maybe this is their play at trying to get the health standards back up.
Well, I'll tell you, it's one hell of an expensive play.
It is, but I mean, when we come down to the whole thing, from what we all talked about, from your guys' experiences to what we've seen through history, I think we can safely say that with the current situation, with the current elements of the rifle and its failings, that a lot of people are looking at this and going, it's $10 billion, and it seems real corrupt.
It stinks like another vanity project of a handful of officers in ordnance that they just want to force through for their legacy and a cushy job at SIG.
Well, one fun fact is
it's like one of those. It's like replacing the Army physical fitness test, which they finally did, and what they replaced it with was not only so much worse, but also required the Army to buy a gigantic amount of equipment.
Yes,
it's like how many sergeant majors got boards out of I don't know, like workout equipment got board seats on workout.
I don't know, man.
Oh my
that
Lord.
Shit was ridiculous. I saw it.
Under Armour suddenly just got a bunch of senior staff, and is like, "Where did these guys come from?" Oh, they're we love the Army, and it's like,
yeah,
come on. After recovering in the Army, I had to buy like a giant weight set and like portable pull-up bars and all those other
those fucking sled things.
Oh my god! Whatever like workout gear company got that contract, all those guys retired real early.
I bet.
Like my family actually knew, and I won't use the general's name, but the lad in charge of doing two great things for the military, like bringing us the knockoff Fox, and changing over for what was it, like 10 years into the Beret. Yeah, we knew him.
Oh, Shinseki.
And one of the fun facts I'm going to just bring up this little fact is he had some points on the vehicle.
Right.
But it was the berets that bothered me and my family.
The berets were fucking ridiculous.
Because do you know what company got the manufacturing contract for the berets?
Go
ahead. His company.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, they were the ones producing all of them until they got called out in an investigation.
Yeah.
Well, whose company was that?
He doesn't want to name him by name.
I'm trying to be very polite in this because we know the family, but it was like that was massive corruption, and he got a light smack on the hand over it. Mm-hmm. Heard you guys were hating on the XM7. I love doing that. Well, we're going to do it a lot, probably over the next year or so.
I'm sure you're going to be hearing from us again on this sooner or later. The more information comes out on this fucking metal trash fire.
So if the Army would run its procurement competently, we wouldn't have a lot of content to do these kind of streams on.
Well, we could talk about these things, but I think this is really what bothers me, and let me know if you guys agree. It's not that I want the classified elements, no. It's that the procurement, the testing, and the feedback are all kept under as much wraps as they can, so that when information finally comes out, you always go, wow, who's retiring on that? Mm-hmm. Why did you do this? I do not know why the government, the Army in this regard, has gone so hard after this, besides the fact that these were the outlines they put on the weapon. And why is it SIG has gotten contracts for 2 main platforms, and they're primarily supplying them to just the Army in both cases?
Yeah.
These raise a lot of questions, and I would like a more open, the Army is going to be moving and doing this, taxpayer. They don't have to tell me all the super special things. They don't got to tell me about the clown ammo or whatever they're making that turns their enemies into clowns in their shop. They just need to at least give people this so that we have confidence in why something is being selected, why something is being developed. And I understand there are certain projects that just have to be secret. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But everyone's going to know what your main battle rifle is.
Yeah. You're not keeping this under wraps, you fucking...
Do I sound unreasonable?
There's not a lot that is secretive about rifle and ammunition design in the year of our Lord 2025.
No.
Yeah. Well, we know, I was doing I was talking to a couple people, and I was talking about the... I don't remember what version of the AK they were, but it's the first one they rolled out during the Ukrainian war, and they had some captured examples of it, and I said, this thing is a piece of garbage.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a piece of garbage
out all the issues with
because it did several really bad things, and it was getting people killed. And, for example, the selector didn't have a brake on it. And when I say a brake, sometimes they're called a guard, sometimes they're called a stop. But effectively, guys, with this newer AK platform, I don't know if they've fixed it, but to give a little bit of example, is when they would get into combat, they would reach down, flip the selector up, and it would flip off all the way back, and it would immediately put it into safety, and they would pull the trigger, nothing happened, and get killed. On top of the fact that it was it was potentially common to hang it up when you were dismounting from an armored vehicle. Yeah. So if you're doing that in under combat situation, you could fall out, get shot, get injured, so on and so on, amongst a whole bunch of other issues. And I think that just like what's going on with the XM7, the Russians pushed through a solution to a problem when they could have actually just looked to their own military, what their own military was doing before they tried to force this new rifle in to satisfy an internal contract with an internal company.
No, I mean, if you're talking about specifically the AK-12, a lot of
the early rollout
was the AK-12 that emerged in there was as near as I can tell, at the start of the war, there was a concerted psyop on behalf of Ukraine to trash on the AK-12. There were numerous gun tuber channels who got their hands on basically on one clone build AK-12, and all of them came out with the same talking points, like, "Oh, this is a bad gun. This is a bad gun."
No, it wasn't that, because we don't really watch many of the gun tubers.
Well, here's the thing. I'm mostly talking about
which is that that is not the case. In general, AK-12s are very well liked these days.
Well, I'm not saying like in the current day. I mean the initial rollout when they hadn't resolved all their problems. But no, there was a bunch of people pushing a bunch of crap over it. But I'm talking like initially.
Yeah.
But they fixed the problems when they met combat with them. And that's what I'm afraid of, is that you're going to get into a similar situation, because they're not here to trash the AK-12. I'm saying that there's similar problems, and I'm worried that it's going to cost U.S. lives to try to resolve them. If that makes sense.
Oh, it almost certainly will. That's the saddest part, is these motherfuckers don't care about the field problems and the logistical issues with this rifle, so long as their legacy gets where they want it to be. This has been an issue time and time again with politicians, upper brass, anybody who doesn't have to be on the field dealing with this shit. They're more concerned about their career.
A good example. He said basically that nothing was stopping it because it was going down too far.
Yeah, that was the issue. Yeah.
And it was an oversight on the initial.
I've seen a photo of an AK-12 with the selector that was basically jammed down past the single fire position. Yeah. It's like halfway down the trigger guard, off where it should be. Now here's the thing.
I think they fixed that quite a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, one, they fixed that quickly, and two, if it ever was an issue, and two, all the pictures of this that emerged, all the reports of this that emerged seem to have again come out of the pro-Ukrainian rumor mill. So I'm not sure if they were just breaking the gun to do it.
I'm not gonna try, because I stay out of that Russo-Ukrainian bullshit. So I'm not gonna try to second guess what's going on there.
To try to go into any of that. My point was basically is there are reasons why we have things go through the productions that we do, and that was an example, in my opinion. Not that I'm saying it's a bad platform. I'm just saying that here's an example of something that went wrong that, if through testing and more open dialogue, could have resolved it. And I think
before
that you kind of have the same
field.
Well, you have the same kind of problem to a degree, is that you have a platform and you have it squashing the guy on the ground who has to use it, and it's the higher ups ignoring. But now,
of course
it did get resolved. But I'm actually concerned, because I want to use that more as a criticism on the XM7, because it has so many things that are against it and historically against it.
And what I think that's going to cause is that it will be much more unlikely that this shit will get resolved in a timely fashion, because they're already trying to hide bad data and complaints on this fucking thing.
So I think I'll ask this question last, and I think you guys have probably the better answers on it. Do you think, with the problems with all of this, that once this thing encounters combat, that it will eventually, like the X or the 14, run into the same issue in terms of basically being booted out of service? Or do you think it's going to linger?
I will say that I frankly hope that it gets extricated from frontline use as quickly as the M14 did, or maybe even more quickly. But I have very little confidence, given the politics behind its adoption, that will happen as quickly as we'd like it to.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think our best bet here is that this recent bit of controversy, which is blown up around and ends up scuttling the project. The Army has now. I've criticized the Army before for canceling completed or nearly completed projects, but in this case, it's a project which never should have been initiated to begin with. And I mean, certainly, I mean, they did cancel the Booker recently, and that they'd already made 80 tanks. They've done a significant amount of the production run for this tank.
And that means they had facilities, production contracts, and all that fun stuff. But I think that's a good point, is that it's almost more important to end something because it's not going to meet its goal. It's going to kill people. Is there anything else you guys want to throw out on this weapon program or things around it?
Actually, I did actually want to say something which I noticed as part of that report, which is that looking at the XM7's barrel profile, it looks like it's been cut for a grenade launcher. It has those the underbarrel cuts for that.
Yeah.
Oh dear Lord!
Can you imagine how much more weight in the front of this thing?
You can have a 20-pound gun, bro.
Yeah.
Oh. I forget the name of the weapon platform, so someone might be able to tell me. But I was watching or looking at the thing because I went, "What happened to this weapon platform? We were rocking it in Iraq." And what it was it came out of one of the earlier development programs, and it was one thing kept from I believe the Marines when they were developing their next generation rifle. And what it was is a grenade rifle that you could set when the round would explode, and we were using it to knock out machine gun nests and things like that. And there was one misfire with it, and the safety mechanism worked perfectly, and the user only had superficial injuries, and they completely stopped.
Shit canned it over a single misfire in its entire usage.
Yeah, and I can't remember
it was the XM25, and actually, so that happened, and also there was something else weird which happened with that, which was that I think Heckler and Koch was the manufacturer of it, and here's the thing, which is the XM25 actually violated the Hague Conventions because it was a 25 millimeter grenade launcher, and that's too small a caliber to be firing explosive rounds. Per the Hague Conventions, it's a 37 millimeter minimum.
It was technically a war crime rifle.
Yeah, it technically was a war crime rifle. Like, HK apparently asked for a waiver from the Department of Defense, which the DoD didn't give them. Like, HK backed up, dropped the project.
Okay.
Which now with that being said, it's all very pretextual. But there was some shenanigans that happened with that. That led to that thing being canceled. Which
it was a fairly expensive platform, but was very effective. And I think ultimately, it was just an excuse for them to get rid of it.
Yeah, it seems like there was some kind of, even though apparently they took it to Afghanistan, people loved it.
Yeah.
It was very effective.
But
and
for whatever strange reason, there was some kind of institutional sabotage that happened on it, and it was just completely canceled.
And I think I can call exactly what it was. It was $30,000 a rifle.
Yeah, I don't think
because no one cared that it was.
Liked how much money they were having to put into a soldier with that rifle.
It was also known as the Punisher, but no one cared that if it broke some convention. If anyone, and I'm going to say this just for anyone who is not familiar, if anyone thinks that war crimes mean crap when you are the victor, well, I got a bridge to sell you in New York, and it's real cheap. But the thing is, at the end of the day, it was a stupid reason, but it was a reason. But we've seen them take things that have been proven in the field, showed that they work very well.
That's also probably true.
And they were shit canned. I think that we might see the same with this weapon, and this is considering that they're having to currently build facilities just to manufacture the ammo.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
As Kite had said, I think people will realize first that all the extras they're trying to strap on the thing are useless. There's not 10 magnified optics in Ukraine right now, or laser boxes.
Yeah, which is also an excellent point, which is this isn't just a rifle, it's a weapon system that also includes a they've developed several scopes for this thing, all of which are gigantic, including and I mean, to the point that there's like a 2-pound scope you're putting on an already very heavy rifle. And what most people in Ukraine run is red dots on holographic sights, because again, most decisive infantry combat there takes place at 50 meters or less, often much less.
You're eyeballing and pulling the trigger. Yeah. And to mention, the fact is, I find it absolutely fascinating that the one case that we're not using information and feedback from Ukraine is on this one thing. Yeah. Does anyone else remember when we sent them 10 to 20 Abrams? And I went, they're testing
31.
And I said, there's 100% they're testing. They're not going to hand Abrams out to go up and get destroyed in this war. They're testing. And then what do they do a month later? They announce that they're already making the next battle tank.
Yeah.
And you go, our main battle tank.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, well, and it has all of these features, and you're like, okay. Yeah. So why is it we're taking all of this from an active combat zone with a group that we generally refer to and consider a peer adversary, and we're completely discounting that information?
Well, I mean, it's. I'll tell you why. It's because the Army has an institutional blind spot with regards to Ukraine. They don't pay a lot of attention to it because it's the lessons they would get out of it would be strongly against the way they want to fight in the future,
basically. And that's
which is a fantasy puppet show.
They don't like what they see, so that they don't like what they see, so they're putting their fingers in their ears and saying, "No, I don't hear you."
So they're seeing. You're saying is that what they're seeing is what they don't want to see, therefore they're rejecting it.
Yes, precisely.
But they'll take all of the other information because it agrees with their assumptions.
Precisely. They're taking the information that confirms their biases and rejecting the large amounts of information which do not.
Which drives me absolutely insane. Because
you want to talk about tanks, like this is as bad as the point that the Army for a long time, both U.S. and German authorities and British authorities were forbidding the Ukrainians from putting add-on armor onto Western main battle tanks they had, both Leopard 2s, Abrams, Challenger. And because of that, a lot of tanks got destroyed.
Yeah. Well, they're actually... And I'm going to continue to say that they're using them as test subjects because they want to see how the standard thing ran and performed, and they didn't care that at the end of the day the people they were putting at risk were going to get killed. They're just like, well, who cares about those people? We're using them as our crash test dummies. And it's really obnoxious. At least we know in the U.S.'s case that's exactly what we were doing. But yeah, I think we covered most of it. Is there anything that we missed, guys?
I think I'm good. I didn't want to dwell on this all day, but this thing's been kind of pissing me off over the course of the time since the last time we talked about it, seeing how much of it turned out to actually be true, and when people tried to address it, whoever in the Army brass decided they didn't want to actually put the complaints out there, just the praises. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody out there trying to... call out this captain for putting out this report, too, sooner or later.
Well, he was immediately, the brass went after him, and one of the spokespeople for SIG, a former Special Forces operator.
Of course he was.
Or as we used to call them, used car salesman. Yeah, is there anything else you think we didn't cover? You wanted to add, aren't you?
No, I think that's pretty much the long and short of it. I did have a question I asked Farv in chat, but we can take that up offline. It's just something I was curious about.
All right, and I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this one for now, guys. I hope you've all enjoyed this. If you happen to watch it later, leave a comment or something, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Subscribe if you're interested in this, and let us know if you want to see more. And, of course, I would encourage each and every one of you to not only read the document, but to contact your own Congress and senators and ask for them to lightly suggest an investigation into it.
Yeah.
And of course,
could you potentially post a link to the document in chat in the description or in the comments?
I should be able to put it in the description once we're finished.
And of course, check out these gentlemen's book. We have Farvifian.
It's the Farvithia Chronicle.
And that's on Amazon, of course, right?
Yeah, and the second one should hopefully be out for the end of the year.
And we have Armchairs, The Maiden's War. Am I right about that one?
That's correct. It also has a sequel out called Valkyrie Knight. And
where can we find that?
That's also on Amazon.
Awesome. Check these gentlemen's books out. Thanks for checking us out. And of course, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.